On. Hey guys, welcome to the Recreational Bodybuilding Podcast. I think we are now episode 10. So we are joined by Mr. Jack Rayner, myself, Brett Freeman, and we are joined with a special guest today, Mr. Ollie Carson. So Ollie, welcome. First and foremost, maybe for the two listeners who don't know who you are, do you want to give a brief introduction?
Yeah, for sure. First and foremost, thank you very much for having me on. Really appreciate it. I'm Ollie Carson. I am an avid recreational bodybuilder myself. I'm also an online coach, and I also run a mentoring business for aspiring online coaches and personal trainers. And I guess more pertinently to this conversation, I am also a father, and I'm a father to be to my second child as well. So I know that you guys want to dig into the topic of managing bodybuilding and having kids, which I'm really looking forward to. It's different.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess first and foremost, congratulations on the soon to be how far along is she with your second one?
She is coming up to 20 weeks. 20 weeks next week.
Oh, so the
So
halfway
yeah,
mark.
we're,
Okay,
we're halfway there exactly.
nice. And maybe you could touch on how old is your firstborn, Jude?
So Jude is a little over a year old. I don't know how parents meticulously remember exactly how many weeks, and I don't know why they record their children's age in weeks, but I am not one of those parents who knows how many weeks old he is. He's one and a bit, but he's an absolute joy. I love him.
That's good. I mean, I wouldn't feel too bad. I think within the first week, I both got the date of my child's birthday wrong, the time wrong, and his weight wrong, all in the space of like a day. So, yeah, I wouldn't
It's a
feel.
lot. It's a lot of data to remember. To be fair, it's completely unnecessary data as well. But
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, jumping into maybe the first question, I think one thing that we wanted to talk about on this podcast was just your experience as a dad and how you balance bodybuilding as a whole. Because I know from my own experience, it's been quite difficult, a bit of a shock to the system. And
Mm.
everything has got sort of thrown up in the air with some degree with sort of nutrition and training. You don't really have as much free time and flexibility with either of those as sort of maybe what you were once used to. So
Yeah.
I guess my first question to you, Ollie, is how did things change, or how was your training and nutrition impacted sort of when the arrival of Jude came?
Yeah. Really good question. And obviously, having to dig back to just over a year now, I'll give you the exact amount of weeks, but obviously, I don't keep that data. But it was a huge adjustment period, and I remember specifically going through a time in my own training and my own endeavors to build muscle at that time was in an off season. Um, that there was a significant change in my ability to kind of adhere to my own protocols. Um, and the interesting point with that was that it was quite a stressful time for me. Although I was absolutely loving being a new father, I still had ambitions and goals to do well with my physique and to progress my training, etc. So to have that kind of stop in your tracks, as you'll know, sleep is severely impacted in the opening stages of having a child. You can hear him screaming in the background now, no doubt. No doubt. Your sleep is impacted, your recovery is impacted, your available time to get meals in, to go and train, it all takes a bit of a hit. And so the biggest lesson that I took away from that is to have a more ad libitum approach to your training and nutrition rather than be confined by the very strict boundaries that you set yourself as an avid bodybuilder. I think we're all guilty of being very meticulous with those metrics, and having a child basically says, I don't give a shit about your metrics. You're not going to sleep and you're not going to have time to go and train. So the second that you adjust your expectations, it becomes a little bit more bearable and enjoyable. And actually, I kind of relished in the prospect of squeezing in 30-minute sessions and doing what I can with that sort of time. And it becomes an enjoyable process, and it doesn't last forever.
So how did your goals still remain the same with regards to your off season when
Mm.
when Jude was born, or was it a case of you almost hit pause on sort of any need to progress with regards to, just because like sleep is impacted, and we know how important sleep is to sort of recovery as a whole and building muscle. So I'd be interested to sort of see if your goals changed at all for a sort of temporary period.
Um, I think initially I had a conversation with my coach at the time and my current coach, Callum, um, just to kind of, again, set realistic expectations as to what we could achieve during the early stages of just having a newborn child. And I think that's vitally important, because although the goal didn't change, my expectations did. So rather than, expecting to go into the gym and crush every single session and make progress across the board, I then went to the gym and took progressions where I could take them. And some days were better than others. And, having that mindset, which is a realistic mindset, is paramount, because you can drive yourself stir crazy if you are an avid bodybuilder and you have the mindset of, I must do X, Y, and Z. Like I said, the unfortunate reality of having a newborn child, it just doesn't care that you want to do that. It just doesn't happen. So yeah, I think that was my kind of experience with it.
And what about your motivation as a whole? Like, I understand, I know how like sort of driven you are with pretty much anything that you do, but did you find like sort of your motivation to train and sort of stick to that goal wave at all? I'm just sort of thinking from my own personal experience. I think the lack of sleep can be one thing that can sort of, having like scattered sleep of like 2 hours throughout a night and then sort of having to get yourself up and go and train. I find that really hard. So if you could sort of understand if you felt anything similar or how you overcame that as well.
Yeah. I did have motivation issues, but they weren't specific to sleep. I don't feel they might have been indirectly impacted by sleep, but I think it was actually more from wanting to, like, you go through that phase of just staring at them. Like, you just look down at them like, wow, you're my child. And you just want to like watch them do nothing really. And so actually I had to kind of, get my arse in gear and actually get to the gym rather than just staring aimlessly at this kind of blob of skin, not really doing much. So that was kind of where I struggled the most, to be honest with you. But actually, to be honest, I actually even remember putting a post up at that time talking about my motivation skyrocketing, because I had this overwhelming feeling of, now I had this tiny human who would, in years to come, look to me for some kind of admiration or motivation to do their own things in life. And it gives you this compelling feeling of, or actually now I need to set an example. And going to the gym doesn't seem that important, but it's the notion and it's the sentiment behind that. It's having a plan and seeing it through and giving it your all, regardless of the situation. I think that speaks volumes. And we're seeing a lot in the world at the minute, and I don't want to make the conversation political at all, but I think a lot of these issues stem from homes. And I definitely grew up in a broken home, and my dad wasn't around and he was abusive to my mum. And those sort of things can have profound impacts on our kids. And I want to set an environment for Jude and for my son to, or my kid to be, it could be a girl. I want to set an example that makes them upstanding citizens and people who contribute to society as opposed to take away from it. And something as simple as adhering to your goals and having ambitions and doing stuff like that is part of that process, I feel.
That's a really good perspective. Yeah, absolutely. How has your life changed since having Jude? Has it been like, so obviously your training before would have been a lot different to what it is now. I guess once things got back on track with sort of finding that routine again, have you found sort of any big permanent changes that have sort of stuck around?
Not permanent, no. And I presume that you're in the early stages of fatherhood. And so you're kind of at the minute, you're seeing a huge shift in the way that you do things. But I'm here to tell you, and I'm here to reassure you that it gets better, it gets easier. And there's not much difference to the way I was doing things previous to Jude to the way I'm doing things now. Obviously, yes, we're in lockdown and I'm training in my garage with hardly any equipment. Well, actually, that's not true. But the fact of the matter is that I can pretty much do everything that I wanted to do prior to Jude now. So it does get easier. And I think a lot of that's down to your support network. I'm really fortunate that my wife, Sophie, is really, really hands-on with Jude, in that she will happily let me get on with work, do my daily work, and let me train and not kick up a fuss with that. So I think that's important. But yeah, I'm just fortunate. It hasn't really impacted me beyond Jude being sort of 4 or 5 months old.
Oh, wow. That's really good.
You're like seeing that as like a light at the end of the tunnel.
So it gets better, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard like the stories I've heard is like it doesn't it gets better, but like there are then different challenges to face. I think with the child, like right now, it's like they're up every few hours, and then I know it gets to the point where they start teething, and that's just a whole different sort of set of issues around sleep and sort of keeping them calm. So yeah, it's good to know that is from your perspective, Ollie.
On the sleep side of things, dude, and I'm probably speaking out of my scope of practice here, but we actually hired in, they call themselves baby sleep experts, but basically it's much like hiring a coach for your training and nutrition. They give you a protocol. So
God.
bloody bodybuilder slash coach, like I can't step out of that realm, but they basically give you a protocol with your child's sleep, and that was invaluable to us because, you know, we were going through the whole baby not sleeping, getting up in the night several times in the night, hard to settle. And one of the biggest things that we changed was just how regimented the routine was. So the time to bed, the time to wake, and also the pre-bed routine was massive for Jude's sleep. And he literally now sleeps 6 p.m. at night to 6 a.m., half 6 in the morning without getting up once in the night. And it's a blessing. And the biggest thing that we did was we removed the dummy really, really early. They speak a lot about the sleep stages. And what happens is when we soothe our kids to sleep and we're rocking them to bed, we're maybe giving them a bottle to let them drift off in our arms, and then we're putting them down, you can almost bypass sleep stages. And they actually go through sleep stages a fair bit quicker than they would if they drifted off naturally. So you do have to go through this transitional period where you take the dummy away, you don't soothe them to sleep, and you let them cry it out. But after 2 days, they're in a new routine and they sleep so much better. So I urge anyone who potentially has kids who are, you know, not really young, but quite young, so 6 months upwards, to try and remove the dummy, to try and remove the pre-bed routine of soothing them to sleep and actually just putting them to bed. They go through the sleep stages much more naturally and they sleep through, that has been an absolute game changer for us. So there you go. There's some value on the podcast for anyone with kids.
Boom. Yeah.
And then you got blue light blockers as well. Blue light blockers, melatonin.
Baby blue light blockers. I got to see that.
Oh man, trust bodybuilders to take any sort of topic and make it about them.
Yeah.
And I guess sort of everything that you've learned from Jude, do you think you're going to do anything differently when your next child comes along? Anything, maybe mistakes that you think you made along the way, and or just things that you're going to keep on doing?
I hadn't really thought about that, to be honest with you. Like, we're really proud of Jude in his character and like his temperament and just the kind of young child that he's becoming. And so I think we'd be foolish to potentially try and change the way that we brought him up with somebody else, that sounds bizarre, with our second child. So I probably won't change anything. Like I say, I'm really fortunate in that I'm in a position where my work supports my family, and Sophie can just, you know, look after the kids, and she thoroughly enjoys it. Like, she is the most innate motherly person I've ever met, and she wasn't prior to having kids. In fact, she had no interest in having kids, but she just completely changed. And so there's no pressure on that front to have Sophie just looking after the kids. And so I don't think much will change. I think Sophie will have her hands full for sure, but that doesn't really affect me. So I'm kind of laughing.
Nice.
I'll probably get killed for saying that.
Don't worry, I'm sure she won't listen to this, so you're all right. You're safe.
See, that'll be our fourth listener, wouldn't it? So that'll be our fourth listener.
Yeah, that's it. I think so. That's really cool. I think we've actually covered a lot of, like, in a really short period of time, which is pretty cool all the way around. Sort of, it seems like the most important thing around being able to sort of keep on track with things is, one, have a bit more of a relaxed approach to some of your training and nutrition, and sort of take it when you can, rather than sort of trying to force something, which I know, Jack, you've sort of talked to me a lot about around sort of almost don't beat yourself up when you can't do what you want, but more so reward yourself for when you do actually stick to it. Jack,
Yeah,
have you had to sort of take that approach with any of your clients who sort of become new dads?
Yeah, see, I wanted to be a bit quiet on this podcast because I've literally got 2 cats, and it's just like I just wanted to kind of soak up this information. So
You can fully relate though, right? 2 cats, they're just as needy as a child.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It would be a bit weird just kind of stroking a kid on your lap, but okay, cool. But yeah, no. Obviously, I coach parents, so yeah. One thing that we do a lot is like kind of we criticize ourselves so much. We're our biggest kind of critique. So like when we were speaking previously, I've had a lot of experience of people kind of not hating themselves, but like, oh damn, I missed this session, I didn't progress this session, and you're always so quick to judge yourself. But then like when you do train and you kind of like Ollie mentioned, you like take that little bit of progress, it's like, do you like then say like, do you then praise yourself? It's like we hardly ever do that. We hardly ever have that like trophy moment. We always have that like dig ourselves down thing. So I think it's very important, especially what you're going through now, Brett, or for any kind of new parent. I think it's very important just to kind of praise yourself when you do that like good thing. So yeah, that was my real take on it.
Yeah,
for sure. And I think maybe just sort of going from my perception and of what maybe other people are going through is, it's not so much of like rewarding, like it's not so much the progress in the gym, it's the actual just getting the workouts done anyway. Like if I can find the time, even though I'm training at home in the garden, if I can find the time to sort of just pull myself away for half an hour, 45 minutes and get a workout done, like that feeling is so much more rewarding than going to the gym in the past. But I think one thing that I have struggled with is sort of flicking through social media and you're seeing all these guys who obviously they don't have kids or anything like that, but like they're nailing everything and like all the ducks are in a row, and you can't help but feel sometimes that you're missing out on some things, like, and it's sort of like, it's such the logical part of me every time I sort of think that is like, dude, what are you thinking? Like, you just had a kid, for God's sake. Like if I had any client who was going through the same situation, I'd be telling them like, relax, like it's not a big deal. But I think for a lot of people, when you're so invested in sort of improving yourself, to sort of have a period of time, no matter how short, where you've had to sort of press pause to a certain degree and you feel like you're not going to make as much progress, I think sort of from a mental health perspective, it can be quite daunting in a way.
The crude saying that I use far too frequently, and you may even know as I'm about to say this, is, and it's really poignant in this situation, is you just got to piss with the cock you've got. You know, there's 0 point in stressing over the things that you physically cannot control. And at the end of the day, and it's not because I completely empathize with what you're saying. I was completely there as well with that feeling, and I empathize with that. But being a parent is a true gift. And being able to actually conceive and have children is a blessing, which far outweighs our ability to go and train. And I think just taking stock on that and taking onus on that for a minute is powerful, you know, and you do count your blessings. And the reality is, dude, in a couple of weeks, couple of months, things will be slipping back to normal before you know it. You'll be crushing your sessions and hitting PVs, and this will all be a distant memory, and you'll have a laugh about it. But I get it, man. It is stressful. It is psychologically quite harmful when you see everyone else absolutely nailing it and you're just struggling to even get in the garden for 20 minutes. But yeah, it will get better, dude, for sure.
One thing I will throw in there is that when you do see people on social media like crushing it, I'll put that in quotations, because like, are they really crushing it? Like, you got to think that social media is such a highlight reel. Like, I can put everything, like my life could be a complete mess, but on social media you see it as very controlled. You see it as very like, I do this, I do this, I do this. It's like a lot of social media is bullshit, and you have to kind of sieve it out. So yeah, I would say, like, again, this is the whole like the critique thing, like praise yourself, like you've got like a kid for like probably the most like precious thing in the world, which that person on social media who you're kind of putting on a pedestal, they haven't got. So yeah, that was my 2 cents.
That's a valuable point, Jack, man, and it's something that I implore all of my clients to do when they're having similar feelings and emotions to you, Brett, of like comparison on social media, etc. Just like take a break from it, you know, or unfollow people momentarily, because if you find that you're being triggered by specific individuals, put them on mute. You know, manage what goes in, manage your inputs, and that will control your output. So if you find yourself being triggered and upset by seeing particular people doing really well, then just put them on pause for a little while and come back when you're in a position to do the same. And that will have a profound impact on your mental health for sure.
Yeah, I literally echo what you say there, especially to clients. And one thing that you said earlier on in the podcast was kind of like almost like you're a product of your environment. You kind of said like if you raise your kid to be like well behaved and everything else like that, then they're going to be kind of in the same way. Same thing with social media. If you like continually look at this guy or look at someone who's consistently giving you negative thoughts, like you're consistently going to be in that negative like mindset all the time. As soon as you kind of mute that, it's gone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's really reassuring for not only for myself, but hopefully for anyone who's listening to this. I think the last thing I want to maybe touch on, which is slight tangent to what we have been going through, is Ollie, with sort of how you train. Obviously, you've bodybuild. I know you've competed a few times. Am I correct? Is that correct? And you sort of live that lifestyle. Is that something that you're going to encourage your kids to sort of go down?
I certainly won't deter them, and the unfortunate reality is that kids often try and emulate their parents, especially, you know, sons and fathers, and I would never deter him, her from doing that if that's what they want to do. You know, I don't see any wrong in doing that. I think it provides a good amount of discipline and focus that can detract from doing things that are potentially not so valuable to somebody's life. So bodybuilding is a great thing to get into in that regard. But I mean, I just watched The Last Dance, and I really want my son to be Michael Jordan now. So I'm going to put a hoop up in the new house. I'm going to buy him Chicago Bulls jerseys every Christmas, birthday, and I'm going to make him Michael Jordan, and he's going to make me lots of money.
Do it. I say,
and I'm going to come to Jack for all the sneaker insights.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been something I've been thinking about a lot myself, and it's sort of, I don't know if I was going down the route of encouraging it, but like you said, it's sort of, if they see it and that's what they want to do, then definitely. And I think, do you find it important to sort of, I think you mentioned this before around sort of setting an example. Do you make a point of sort of exploiting due to sort of the activities that you do, sort of whether it be in like you're training in the garage and stuff like that? Do you sort of allow him to watch you and things like that to see if it may have an impact, or just to show that you're setting an example?
Not consciously. I don't think he's at that age where this is your first child, isn't it, Brett? So like me, when I had my first, or what, I'm talking like I'm some sort of veteran who's got like all these kids, but when I first had Jude, I had no context around at what age they can do what, or how much they can articulate or understand, and you never really know until you get there. But I can assure you, at his age now, at just over 1, he wouldn't have any grasp on me training, and he wouldn't be able to carry that forward into his life. He'd just look at me like I'm some sort of donut training. So I don't consciously do that sort of thing. I think it's the sort of thing I'll be mindful of moving forwards, is letting him see me do stuff that I think is valuable for sure. But at the minute, he just shouts noises at me and then runs away. So no, I don't think it would be beneficial for him right now, to be fair.
Sure. And then what about like maybe touching on your plans for the future when he's a bit older? How do you plan to sort of address, again, this is really off topic, but how do you plan to address sort of the body image side of bodybuilding, and sort of that obsession with how you look and weighing yourself and things like that? How do you think you're going to address that?
Yeah, I've had this chat with Sophie, and like we joke, and I say, you know, he's going to be this little bodybuilder and all the rest of it. And Sophie goes, you know what? I don't want him to do that, because I don't want him to have, you know, body conscious issues, and there is a lot of potential pitfalls of getting involved in this kind of sport and this interest. So I am aware of that. I think it's overplayed in the fitness industry, and that's probably a controversial thing to say. My views on that are, yes, there is a lot of body dysmorphia. There's, bigorexia is the term being thrown around amongst guys. There is, but I think that crosses over to most people in their life. I think a lot of people are unhappy in the way they look, and if you had to be really honest, a lot of bodybuilders are happier with the way they look than general population people are. And they have their hang-ups, and they don't like their muffin tops, and they don't expose themselves on the beach. So yes, there is some negative connotations with getting into this kind of stuff, and there is some body image issues, but nothing that far outweighs what the normal person experiences, and actually probably to a lesser degree, because we do have nice bodies, quotation mark, and you do feel more confident in your own skin. So I think it's overplayed. I think it's a bit of a bandwagon that people jump on, to be honest with you. I never really comment on it because I know that there are people that do struggle with it. So it's not my place to say, but I think it's just overstated.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right. That was actually a really good discussion. So thank you. Jack, did you have any follow-up questions that you wanted to ask, or have you been scared off having children?
No, I'm good with 2 cats right now, but give it 4 years. I was going to question the exposing himself on the beach, but I thought I'd let that on slide.
I probably shouldn't have used the word exposing. That was really the wrong word to use. Keep your dick in your pants.
Yeah, you got to piss with the cock you got.
Quote of the day. Okay. Nice. So Ollie, where can people find you, mate?
So Instagram is Condition by Carson, spelled with a K because I'm a weirdo, and websites conditioncoaching.com, also with a K, and Supercharged Fit Pro for anyone who wants to kind of level up their online coaching service. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Ollie, thank you so much, mate, for coming on. Jack, as always, a pleasure. And we will speak to you all next time. Bye.
Cheers.
Sweet.
Thanks very much.